wanted authority for that phrase. Now, when Google first comes into this site, the bot is going to follow these links here, all right? Because the bot moves around the web by jumping from link to link. So when it finds a link, it follows it, unless it's got the no-follow tag, although lately, even with the no-follow tag, we're finding that Google is still following some links and indexing them, and it's also ignoring robots.txt on occasions. So by getting a link, I would put the link probably up here, near the start of the menu, or maybe even above the little image here, maybe above his head, Stephen Conroy. Then it's actually logical and intuitive to visitors of the site. And also they're getting the link really early in the page. And that prominence is telling Google something as well. The higher that you have a link on the page, the more significance that link has to that page. So that's what this site can do to rank higher. Now, it was interesting, yesterday the South Australian government announced, there's a South Australian government, there's a state government here in Australia, and they announced that they were going to, if you wanted to make a political comment online, basically, leading up to the South Australian election, then you would also have to provide your name and address. We have electronic electronic press laws in this country, so that in lead up to an election, there's all sorts of restrictions on what you can and can't say in the electronic media, and also if you are saying something in public, quite often you'll have to give some reference to who you are. And the South Australian government said, well, if you're going to make any comment on the internet, you'll have to leave your name and address. So every time you make a tweet or something on Facebook or a comment on another person's site, and today, of course, they've overturned that particular law because it's stupid. And they realise how stupid it is because it's not something they can police. And the same applies with internet censorship on a wider scale, which the Australian government is trying to put in. Now, people, rightly so, I believe, get very upset about the Australian internet censorship laws that are coming in, saying that it's a breach of our civil liberties, freedom of speech. It's creating a blacklist, a secret blacklist that we won't know what's on it. It could be used for political purposes, which we've seen in the past it already has, and all these things. And they're really important things. However, no one is talking about what happens when this filter breaks. Now, I don't know about you, but I've owned computers for quite a long time, and occasionally they break. And a government filter, I would suggest, won't be any different to any other computer. And if you've ever managed servers for any length of time, you'll also know that they break. So my question would be for the government, what happens when the internet filter breaks? Does Australia's internet access go off the air? What happens? There doesn't seem to be any contingency plans. I haven't heard or read of anything that's any fail-safes. What would be the best fail-safe is that if it broke, it was just switched off and all access was okay. Because what will happen with this filter is that it will get hacked. And the reason I'm bringing this up, apart from the fact that I'm against the filter, in case you haven't guessed, is that there were some posts about how the filter will affect SEO during the week on Twitter. And Mike Fitz, AU, did a blog post talking about that because Google is now more sensitive to page load times, and here's Mike Fitz, AU, and because Google's more sensitive to page load times, that the bot would be made slower when visiting Australian sites. The way I understand the legislation, and no one really understands at the moment because we haven't seen it, but what's being proposed is that wouldn't happen because it would be a corporate, the Google bot would be accessing the web from a corporate link or access point, and that wouldn't be filtered. So the Google bot wouldn't be slowed down. But what's of more concern to me is that if it breaks, what happens? Because the Australian online industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and once you start messing with it and you don't know what you're doing, and I don't care what anyone says, no one knows how this filter will operate in real time. We've seen trials and those sorts of things, but you know, as we all know, once you go live on the net with something, it's a completely different story. And as you know, the Australian government found out last week with the My School website, they had some extraordinary number of hits. And I always smile when people say they've had an extraordinary number of hits and the website broke, because you know, you could have 10, 20 hits every time one page is loaded, because a hit is basically an asset on the page, like a graphic, the page itself, things like that. So hits don't really count for anything. And I did some quick calculations on the traffic to the government's My School website, and it was probably about 15,000 parents, which is a lot less than the millions and millions that they said would have hit the site. But what can happen in this situation is that we go off air, the country goes off air, things break, it doesn't get fixed, no one knows who fixed it. Who do we pick up the phone and call and say, excuse me, my internet's broken? I know who I do it when it's when my iiNet connection goes down. I just ring up iiNet. But the filter, that is the main concern for me, apart from the free speech issues. It's the practicality issues of implementing something like this on top of a system that exists and works, and we know it works. Once you start tinkering with it and putting things in the middle, then you are going to have problems. And so thankfully the South Australian government has withdrawn their legislation. But the one question that we're getting a lot of lately is about people seeing weird results in Google. And when I say weird, I mean that they look good on their home computer, but when they go into the office, the results are completely different. And we've had a lot of people say to us, woohoo, we're #1. And we said, well, actually, you're not yet. You're near it, but you're not yet. And the reason you're seeing those sorts of differences could be a couple of things. If you Google a phrase on one computer and you find that you go to another machine, another internet access point, and you Google it and the results are different, there can be a couple of reasons why that's happening. The first could be simply that you're logged into Google Gmail or something like that, or just your Google account, and Google is looking at your history and your preferences and your search history, that is, and saying, well, based on your search history, I think this should be #1 for you. Or the other thing that Google did this year is that they launched personalised search even if you weren't logged into your Google account. Now, I've gone looking for it this morning in Google and I can't find the setting anymore, but it was about the 5th of January. It was switched on for my copy of Google Chrome, and when it wasn't happening in Firefox. And when I went into Google Chrome, I was getting results from something that results put at #1 for something that I clicked on once, which I think was pretty useless, really. Anyway, it doesn't seem to be there now, but you might be experiencing something like that. The key here is that if you think you've got a #1 result, check it on a couple of different machines from a couple of different access points just to confirm. And people say to me, well, Jim, personalised search, well, if we've got personalised search, doesn't that mean SEO is dead? No, it doesn't, because to get into personalised search, you still have to be on page 1 to get there. And by that I mean that the majority of people, and I mean 99% of them, will not look to page 2 of Google results. So the only reason that you're going to get into their personalised search is that if they have seen you on page 1. So personalised search, in my book, actually makes SEO better for your site, because you just really have to get on page 1 if you want to get caught up in personalised search. But of course, #1 is the ultimate goal. And that's it for today's show. If you have any questions, send them in, and if I don't know the answer, I'll make something up. Thanks very much. See you next week. Bye.